Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking about something that I feel is kind of misrepresented, especially when it comes to areas such as the news, newspaper, magazines as well. And that is the idea of female sexual health. Now, for women who are facing postmenopausal situations, who suffer from low to low libido and sex that feels painful or uncomfortable, there is a bigger hurdle for many of them, which is also dealing with things such as sexual shame that can be emotionally and physically debilitating. Our guest joining us on the program today is a research scientist who specializes in blood chemistry analysis, genetic engineering, and human tumor biology. She has a wonderful way of being able to share things such as how our bodies interact with the foods we eat, the supplements we take, and the lifestyle we lead, and sharing this in an understandable and memorable way. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Dr. Sandra Babakwa. Dr. Babakwa, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's always great having you on the program. You know, you've brought things up that in the many years I've been in radio, and even if you're just out there and you're not a radio host and you watch, shows such as The Doctor and the like, you kind of realize that, what they're kind of telling us out there just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. What do you think about all that?
Well, I can tell you that from my point of view, we're still in the dark ages. We're learning so much about human health and the human body, and we're expanding how we look at ourselves. And in so doing, it's not only bringing deeper healing, but it's also allowing for people to really experience transformation in their own lives, becoming more akin to who they actually are meant to be, and allowing them to be more creative and developing the relationships that they were hoping for.
Now, how did you become involved in the study of female sexual health?
Well, I have a program that helps women with their pelvic health, and that's been going on for many, many years. It's called the Pelvic Health Transformation Program, and that's for women who have been dealing with incontinence of both varieties, organ prolapse, where the organs can fall down into or through the vaginal space. There's also sexual pain syndromes and pelvic pain syndromes that can really deeply affect a woman's, livelihood. And these are things that most women don't speak about. There's also urinary urgency and bladder irritation issues and persistent UTIs. These sorts of things are going on rampant amongst especially postmenopausal women. And in some cases, you go to the doctor and the doctor says, welcome to your old age. This is the way it's going to be.
Wow.
And you're not going to, or you get some kind of a treatment, it doesn't really last, or people go for surgeries and the surgery doesn't last. And so I had this program going on. And what was happening was, over the period of the class, we run the class once every year. It's a 9-month program. And the women were coming out of it saying, Dr. Sandy, my libido's back. What do I do now? What do I do?
Yeah, what do I do now? Huh?
What do I do now? So
go to a sporting city. I'm sure there are a lot of guys out there that could probably find a way to help you with that.
Well, maybe and maybe not, Daniel.
Right.
Because what I've found is that a lot of the men don't have the education either. The women don't know and the men don't know. And the women are hoping that the men don't know, but the men generally don't know because the women don't know.
Right.
So, and
nobody seems to know anything.
Nobody seems to know. So there's a problem. But so I started The Mystery is Over, Understanding Female Sexual Health. And what happened in the beginning, all I was doing was putting the map of, okay, here's where all of your erectile tissues are. Yes, there's a number of them that you've never seen before or didn't know they were there, but they're all connected to each other, and here's how you can work with them. That's how it started. It was just a very simple class. And we taught the first, 7 basic orgasms for the female body, and this is a big surprise for a lot of the women, and it was great. But what happened was we started developing a faculty. We now have a faculty of 21 practitioners, and we touch in on many different aspects. So that's how the sexual health, the involvement in sexual health came about, is because women were coming to me and saying, I need to know more. And you know what? I wanted to know more too. So I collected all these amazing practitioners, physicians and sexologists and tantrikas and people in the know that were writing some of the major works that are out there and or studying some of the ancient texts, and had information that was very, very interesting and exciting. So the class is really a wide array of all aspects of female sexual health. That's how I got into it.
Well, that sounds not only liberating, but tremendously intriguing, to say the least. Now, it must be pretty exciting for people to realize, here's this conventional knowledge and wisdom that we seem to buy into that over many decades has created a sort of conditioning that makes us believe what is being said out there is true. And all of a sudden you're coming in and saying, hold on a minute, let's really take a look at this, the human body, and have a real understanding of what's going on here. What is with this contrast to this kind of conditioning that I'm talking about versus what you're talking about here today?
Well, tell me more about what you're thinking about, the conditioning of our culture?
What I mean is the conditioning of the message. For instance, the woman goes into the doctor, well, hey, welcome to old age. What's up with that?
Okay.
That's what I mean by conditioning, that this has been going on for decades from people that are supposed to be educated about the body, that are supposed to, well, let's just say, perceptively know more than we do, but it turns out they don't seem to know any more than we do, maybe.
Okay, so I'm going to take it back to something that's very basic, and that is that our culture and most cultures are, and I don't want to, we're not going to get into male bashing.
No, I'm not. That's
young.
Not what we're interested in here. We're interested in what I mean by the actual education in a system that's supposed to be progressive, right, is what I'm talking about. So I'm glad you said that so we can add some clarity. So.
Yeah, so we are in a very male-based education program, and all of our physicians and every one of us has gone through school in a very male way or young way. The old word would be young. And that means that it's very focused. And so because of that, the way of femininity is very different. Women are naturally have the ability to be more diffuse. We have diffuse awareness. We're not focused. So the way that school and society works gives a message that we are broken. Females, many women believe that they are not, they're not thinking correctly or they're not acting correctly. The way of femininity or yin is not valued in our culture. And so women physically, mentally, psychologically are given the message from a very young age of being broken, and that comes into the medical field as well. So it's natural to look at a woman and give her the message that that there's something wrong that needs to be fixed. And female sexuality is not the same as male sexuality. And if you go on to, the messages that are being given in the movies and in books is that we work the same way as a man, and we don't. That's actually wrong. Women are like slow cookers, and men are like microwaves.
Isn't that the truth, especially in the 20s?
Well, throughout life, and this is actually the way it's supposed to be. It's normal. And so we are given messages that we're broken, and then when there is actually something wrong, like sexual pain, we're told that we're mentally broken, and that's not necessarily true either. There's a lot of physical reasons. We have very great sensitivity in the genitals, and when we have reactivity there, the woman is told that there's something wrong with her, and that's the first point I was making. It's the way that society looks at the feminine individual is as someone who is a little broken, or maybe a lot broken. And so women get this message throughout their lives, and we take it for granted that that is the problem. Yes, we are smaller. Yes, we are weaker. And every woman, deep in her bones, knows this and recognizes it and knows that she needs protection, and men are there to protect. So with that in mind, you can imagine that she feels dependent. And the one thing that in our culture a woman doesn't want to feel is dependent. She doesn't want to feel dependent on anyone. I mean, here I am. I've got a PhD in molecular and cellular biology. Do I want to feel dependent?
Of course
not. I have my own
Mm-hmm.
business. However, the intuitive woman does have that knowledge that she is weaker, and most women fear for their physical safety on at least once a week, if not once a day, basis, and sometimes more often than that, and men generally don't. So when you take that back into the messages that we get about our bodies, women are weaker, men are stronger, and women have this message of being broken. So when we do have a problem, it's instantly taken as deeply personally, and it's kind of hard to surpass, if that makes sense.
Well, it really does, and I mean, this could be a deeper issue we could really be talking about as a wonderful, thing on the program here, but I know we want to get back to what we're talking about. But here's, just to lend some clarity to this, I think if this is true, and I think this is really, in a healthy way, natural, women want to feel secure and protected, and men would like to protect their women. I mean,
yes.
In a healthy world, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the world of the messages that are being broadcasted or written about out there, they have skewed and really, for lack of a better word, bastardized that whole attitude.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
And we're on track here, yeah. And so you can see why a woman would feel, broken or shamed because of that. And you know what? And the funny thing is, it's happening to men now. I don't know how many commercials I can hear a day on the radio about erectile dysfunction. It's like, are you kidding me? 5-10 years ago, you weren't hearing this at all, but now it's almost like you're hearing it on every other message, and it's mainly, of course, a clinic that has the solution. So there you go. If you're 25 years old and what, 25 years old? Are you kidding me? You should be a sundial right now. But anyway.
Now, you know what, though? But a lot of the men are, more and more of the younger men are having some dysfunction, and part of that has to do with online porn.
Yeah.
And the use of online porn actually is associated with very early loss of function for men, erectile dysfunction. Very, very unfortunate, because they're not meant to do that. But the use of porn can be very debilitating for a man's sexuality. That's not normal.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about, back to what we were talking about here. Now, of course, we address a mature audience. And so you may have a listener out there who may be having hot flashes, has a rough time sleeping at night, and feels moody and cranky, and just feels like, when it comes to sex, I don't have any libido. I'm just kind of done with it. How do you suggest these individuals rekindle their libido, for instance?
Well, one of the let me see, most of the women that you just described are probably either perimenopausal or postmenopausal, meaning they're no longer in their reproductive years or at the very tail end. And so one of the first things I'm going to indicate, and one of the reasons we even have libido, is because we need to have a balance of hormones in the body to be able to feel that. And that's not just the reproductive hormones. That can have to do with some of the other hormones in your endocrine system. We talk about the HPAT axis: hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals, and thyroid. And if those are suboptimal in their hormone production, if the thyroid's a little low, if the adrenals are fatigued, if a person has had a lot of stress, it actually interferes with the hormones that he or she needs to maintain libido. So if a woman is postmenopausal, she's going to have a tendency to, the hormones if she isn't really taking great care of herself and has low stress, she's very likely to have low or no libido. So one of the points to recreate that is take a look at the hormones and see if they're in balance. Now, a postmenopausal woman does not need the levels of hormones she had as a 20-year-old, nor should she want to. That was awful. And it's really much, much more advantageous to be in the postmenopausal years when we talk about female sexuality. The postmenopausal woman has much, much higher capacity for orgasm and sexual function than the reproductive woman. And that may surprise you to hear that. But she no longer is dealing with widely fluctuating hormones up and down all month long. Now everything can be more stable. Now if she has a low-stress lifestyle, if she has great nutrition, and her body is still producing some hormone, and it's in balance, she may have reasonable amount of libido and have tremendous sexual capacity. But she may have crashed. And that is the person that is high stress or has maybe some nutritional deficiencies, doesn't have the right fats in the body to be able to produce the right amount of cholesterol and the right types of cholesterol so that she can have the right hormones. These are all issues that allows for a woman to have libido. And actually it applies to men as well. So looking at hormones, and we're not looking for just one. It's not just estrogen or just testosterone. We're looking at the ratios of these hormones. And a postmenopausal and a postandropausal man as well wants to have a balance of hormones, but just a little bit, just enough to maintain libido, to maintain heart health, bone health, brain health, to maintain your memory. All these things are really important and contribute to great quality of life. But also, I find that a lot of women, including myself early on when I first started getting into this, is we don't have the right information. Nobody has told us or given us a map of what is in our bodies. We're missing information, and we don't know how to use it. If you haven't found all of your erectile tissues, how can you possibly know what's best for your individual body to be able to have great sexual function and satisfaction? You can't possibly know because you didn't get the basic information. So having the information and knowing what to do with things that may be out of sorts. There may have been, you mentioned about shame, and that is a possible concern that would come up, and you would need to know how to deal with that. You need to know how to communicate with your partner. You need to know your body. And the other thing that it's so easy to get into when you don't have libido is you get out of practice. And the female body, that's the slow cooker, right? The slow cooker wants to stay warm. And if the slow cooker stays warm, it works better. It heats up faster.
Okay.
So that means practice, practice, practice.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right? And so use it or lose it type of a thing. But,
right,
but
exactly.
However, that's not really true. The female body does not lose the capacity for orgasm. We have women coming through our program that are in their 90s and having absolutely no problem. Once they get things warmed up, all the tissues are still there and functional. So we don't actually lose it, which is interesting. So anyway, that's what is needed. That's how you get the libido back.
Oh, wow, that's amazing when you think about, and the idea of getting in the mood and how to feel sexy, things like that. How do you work with people who are interested in pursuing that as well?
Well, there's a number of pieces that can be very helpful. Most people have had the experience of putting a child to bed. When you put a child to bed, you have a ritual. You may take them in, brush the teeth, get into the jammies, or maybe it's a warm bath, whatever the ritual is, read a book. You have all this ritual that says it's time for bed. And in that ritual, the child relaxes and gets into the mood for going to sleep. And for some kids, they could be bouncing off the walls at 10 or midnight, and you may have a hard time. So that ritual is really important to be able to get their head around it. The same thing is true for a woman. A woman, as I mentioned before, is aware of many, many things at once. She's built that way. We have diffuse awareness. So it's not, guys are like really into, why can't my female employee focus like the men can? Well, it's not that we can't focus. We can learn to focus, but that is a very male view. What we need to do as a society is to value the defocus. The diffuse awareness is amazing for taking in a world view. So she has diffuse awareness, which doesn't help for getting in the mood. You have to focus, at least in the beginning. So you use ritual, just like with the child. And it's different for each woman. Some women might prefer to have a prayer. Some women have a place that they go. You could have a soft blankie, something that you have, maybe light some candles, maybe put on music. And this involves practicing the unused practice of self-love. This means taking care of yourself. And many women have a really hard time taking care of themselves. They're so hardwired to take care of everybody else and not themselves. So it means actually stopping and doing a ritual to allow the mind to stop thinking about the dishes and the laundry and what you're going to eat and the grocery list and the job and the husband and the kids and the da-da-da-da, everything that's going wrong in life, and you have to take the car into the garage. See, a woman is thinking these things all at once, faster than I just said them.
Wow.
She may have 80 things on her mind. And Daniel, it's not a guy thing. Guys, if they're doing 2 things at once or 3, they're multitasking. Mm-hmm. Women are doing 80 things at once, all the time. All the time. And it's not that we're trying to be that way, it's just the way we are. So you have to kind of slow that down to allow for sexual awareness to come up and allow herself to be fluid. And it's a slowing down, and that is a feminine trait. And when you slow the female body down enough, maybe through massage, this is where a partner can be really helpful, to slow things down and to get into the body and not into the head. Slipping into the body can do wonders for sexual awareness. So we're talking about ritual, quality of touch. How do we touch ourselves? How do we touch our own bodies? How do we touch other bodies? Quality of touch is a practice. And valuing that slowing down, valuing that feminine way. It's not that it's wrong to be diffuse. We have to allow for that, but allow for that slowing down to happen in the bedroom so that she can get in the mood. And it takes time. The slow cooker doesn't get hot right away. It takes time and practice.
Well, there's no doubt about, that the idea of sensuality and not being into a rush for anything, but actually being in the moment, I think has a lot to do with it as well. And I think too many times it seems people begin something with the end result in mind. Mm-hmm. And you forget about the journey and all the enjoyment and the fun in between, kind of a thing there. And I can see why, according to what I have here in front of me, that about 10% of a lot of mature women have never experienced an orgasm. I mean, is that true?
Absolutely, and that's what we see in the program, too. About 10% of our participants have never experienced orgasm ever. So if I'm talking to you right now, it's not a problem. No one's ever given you a map, and you've never had a chance to explore what is right for your body. And there's that, again, that honoring the qualities that are feminine. This is not something that's in our culture. It's not what we're taught. And to allow for that femininity to come into the room is very, very helpful. Being in the moment, as you said, Daniel, is really important as well, but it's hard for a woman to be in the moment when her head is thinking of so many things at once. So honoring that diffuse awareness and then having ritual to bring that awareness into the body is kind of paramount to be able to allow a woman to be there. I mean, really, when a man catches a woman's attention, he might it's his strength and power that might wake her up, and she goes into a softening, and that's exactly how the female genitals respond as well. She needs a softening and a cajoling, a waking up, and it's not what we see in the movies. It's not, she doesn't just instantly turn on like the microwave and, oh my goodness, then we have, fireworks. That's not it. That's not how women work. And women, let me see, a woman's genitals are her yin. That's her quiet side, the part that needs to flower or blossom very slowly. Her yang, her male way of being, is in her heart. She is out into society. She is taking care of everybody. She's doing the kids and the family and the blah, blah, blah. She does it all, does the work, superwoman, heart. It's all about heart. A man's the opposite. His yin is his heart. His yang, his male, what part of a man is penetrating and hot? That's going to be his genitals, his phallus. So he's the lingam is out there and penetrating and hot into the world. So he's the one that is the stimulating factor for her to wake up. But it has to be slow. And this is what a lot of guys are not taught, is to slow it down. Slow it down and give her the time to wake up. Allow her to focus. It's got to be sweet. And not for all women, but for most. And knowing what each person's flavors are in the bedroom is important. It's a conversation that needs to happen. Honestly, it should happen early in relationships rather than later on. Because, if someone wants a particular thing to happen in the bedroom that someone else finds appalling, that's kind of not going to work.
Right.
So, and for some people, anything other than missionary position is S&M. So it can go in various different ways. Some people want soft touch. Some people can't stand being tickled. They need a more rougher touch. So these are styles. And knowing our styles is very important as well. But that whole piece of her needing to have the warm-up and him actually being the stimulus for that is a very important point to make. Because when two come together, what will happen is he will create eventually the heat. And as her body wakes up, what will happen is, as they are together, it's her heart that will open even further than it's ever been before as that energy moves through her. And she's going to heal his heart. And that is what will heal our culture. That's what heals relationships. And that changes both people in the couple. But first, oftentimes a woman needs to work with her own body. She needs to figure out what she wants. You're right. A lot of women don't have orgasm. And they need to find out where their parts are. Basic education. What works for me? What's best in my body? If she doesn't know, how's she going to teach someone else? That's impossible. So she needs to learn her own body, learn how she works. And that means having permission to touch our own bodies. And that is one of the things that at the end of the class, the major message that I get, the more common message, is thank you so much for giving me permission to touch my own body. Wasn't happening before. So we have lots of women that come in, and during the course of the class, they have that magical moment where they have their first orgasm, and then it's Katie bar the door.
Wow. So this is a class, women out there, if you want to go and take it, you might have the experience of an orgasm. That's better than, the pop quiz, I guess.
Yeah, really. And not feeling, these women that haven't had orgasm, they feel broken. Again, that same message coming through. They think there's something wrong with them. Ladies, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that our bodies look or work differently than men's bodies, and we haven't been taught about that. That's the issue.
And the thing is, what you're talking about here alludes back to what was being talked about earlier in the program, and obviously shame is that big thing. But look, shame is another one of those situations that has been really a conditioning, and I could even go and be as bold as the church, because it's certainly... there it is. The idea that they want just missionary. It's with the lights off, under the covers, that sort of a thing. So it's a shameful act, sort of a thing. And women especially, that seems to be, the idea of how women are depicted. They're supposed to be that dutiful housewife, for instance, waiting for the man to come home from work. That sort of a thing. And so when they go out and beyond, literally... I'm going to put this out there. I remember there was a time that I was dating a woman, and we had sexual relations, and she had asked me this question point blank. She says, "Do you think I'm a slut?" And I looked at her and I said, "No, I don't think that way at all." And this was my response to this, and maybe this was being raised by a single mom for a fair amount of my life anyway, is this: don't you think women should be allowed to experience sexuality with other men to see what really, turns them on and fits, so to speak? It seems like when the men go out there, there's notches on the bedpost, but yet women are shamed. To me, I was like, no, not at all. I didn't think that way in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I respected her more, because I was trying to say, you should be allowed to do this too, if that's the direction you want to go. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
This is like a great conversation. It's a great piece because...
Well, I think it really falls in line deeply with, again, in the beginning of the show, we were talking about that conditioning that we have been hypnotized to believe.
Mm-hmm. And women get a double message. It's two-faced. One is you should be pure as the driven snow, especially on the day that you get married. You should be pure as the driven snow, know nothing about sexuality, and yet once you get into, so you're taught, do not have sex, do not touch, do not look, do not touch yourself, do not touch him, don't look at that kind of information, don't learn about it whatsoever, and then once you hit the bedroom, you're supposed to be able to please him and know all kinds of things and be sexually adventuresome or, somehow. And what happens is we get into the bedroom, and honestly, both the men and the women are ill-prepared. The men are ill-prepared because a lot of the young men now especially are getting educated by the porn on the Internet and the messages that they're getting there. And that is woefully wrong information. It's highly unfortunate. So that is coming into the bedroom, and she's horrified. Some of those porn stars go through years of training before they can do the things that they are doing. So the men think that their wife should be able to do it and that the wife is broken if she can't do the things that he's seeing. So she's supposed to be incredibly educated and pure as the driven snow in the same moment. How does that happen? And how do you give someone the message for years and years and years, do not even think these thoughts? And then when you get into the bedroom, what's going to happen? It can be akin to rape because she has no idea of how to step into that role. She hasn't been taught. Or if she has done, she feels guilty about it because she's been given that wrong message. So, yeah, this is a problem. This is a problem. proper education for women is essential. So that's why The Mystery is Over was born, because it's good information, good solid information. And it's kind of interesting too. We get into not only how to deal with problems such as shame, because of course these cultural messages are how is a woman not going to feel shame? She can be ashamed because she doesn't know what she's doing, and she could be ashamed because now all of a sudden she's having sex and she's been taught all of her life to not do that. It's like, has that destroyed me? Am I now a dirty person? So those messages, no, you're not dirty because you're married, but Lordy, I don't know what this man wants from me. So you see the problem.
Right. And then the guy in there, talking about all this and acting like, well, somehow he knows how to do what he's doing too.
And he doesn't know.
No.
But the problem is that he hasn't learned anything about her, and that is a problem. Now, in the class, we do keep it female only. The classes are female only, but the partners can listen to the classes after the fact. But we like to keep it very much private during class so that women can feel open to ask the questions that they want, but the basic information is then made available to the men so that they can come and get the information and get the map and find out what it is that she's got and how to use it, because that can be very, very helpful for her to learn as well. They can learn together with brand new information. That's actually based on real science. But we also have some amazing information from the tantrikas. These are people that have practiced tantra, and they're studied from, people have been tantrikas for thousands of years. And so these are practices that are all about bringing up the sexuality for men and women in a way that meets our body's needs, but it's also attending to energy systems in the body. And many women in our program learn about their chakras for the very first time. They've never felt the energy of their sexuality ever before. Even women that have been very successfully sexually active may not have felt their energy centers. And once you learn about these energy centers and develop the ability to move energy through them, what can happen is something that's called Kundalini. And Kundalini is when energy moves through the body. It can go all the way through from the genitals all the way to the head. And it can, what happens is a couple of things. There's a deep awakening of creativity. It also can create amazing connection between a couple, within a partnership. But even if it's just someone working individually with their body, once they find out about these things, and it's so interesting. I had a couple, they were deep in their 70s, and they came into the class. Actually, she had some major pelvic health issues and got better in the pelvic health transformation program, got her libido back, went into the sexual health class, and she and her husband, deep in their 70s, they had been married since they were, I think she was 19 and he was 20-something when they married. So it's like, they'd been married well over 50 years. And the discovery of their sexuality was brand new. And they called me up, literally both of them crying on the phone. She was actually bittersweet. She was like, why didn't we know about this when we were younger? This is awful. I mean, here we are, we're in our 70s, and we're just learning about this. But he was so grateful. He was ecstatic. And the two of them were developing a brand new relationship. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. So that has to do with moving energy through a couple. And it can be very mind-blowing, and it can bring on one's deepest self in a way that it's hard to describe. But what I see is in the women that come through the class that they are somewhat transformed. They're very much alivened, and more creative and more expressive is what I'm noticing.
Wow, I'm as I'm taking all this in, I'm thinking to myself too, and I know we've had you on the program before, that there must be more than one type of female orgasm, I'd imagine, that they experience after learning all this in a class.
Yeah, in the class we only go over the 7 basic orgasms. And most women only know about touching the clitoris and like a real local clitoral orgasm, and that's about it. And that's a good place to start. That's great. But we do the first 7 basic orgasms, and this has to do with learning where your erectile tissues are too, and stimulating in different areas, and making sure that it's like what parts. And not everyone's going to like all of them. Some people will prefer different ones, but at least in one way or another, finding a way to have a whole body orgasm, which totally changes. It's a game changer. Whole body orgasm. So the entire body is woken up, and that's when you can start to move energy, and a couple, if there is a couple, there can be energy exchange in that way. And so, but it's her waking up her energy that wakes up his. He can't have that experience until he's with a female that knows how to do it, and that's why it's so important for more women to know how to do this. There's lots of different types of orgasms. The most experienced speakers in the class talk about dozens of very distinctively different orgasms that are possible. I can tell you that there's at least maybe 26, 27 different types of orgasms, but there are some professionals out there that say that there's a lot more than that. So,
wow,
what do I know?
Yeah, geez, after 7 you'd think, well, how many more do you need? But hey, I guess all you can eat, right?
Well, how many different types of foods do you want?
Right. I want to experience them all. We only have one life. Hey, why not? But,
right.
Again, you go back to what you've been talking about the whole time. A, you get past that barrier, that conditioning. B, you realize that who you are is really okay, or actually even better than that, and then get to know yourself.
Yeah.
And there's the exploration. And when you take a look at, especially in the realm of Eastern mysticism and religion, if you will, is that's exactly what a lot of it is. It's about becoming self-aware, that you're alive, that you're more powerful, that sort of thing, rather than, here's this God up here. And I'm not bashing any religions, but you really take a look at it's real separated that way in the West. And you realize that if you can get past that, because there's a lot that the West actually has to offer as well. But, not trying to bring religion into this, but it's a way of looking at the fact that how did we come to condition ourselves that way in the first place? Boy, somebody tripped a couple of wires on the way on that particular journey, and look where we are now.
And it's very, very difficult for a woman to feel completely loved if she hasn't been attended to in this way. We ladies have the capacity to heal our partners, and when we have sexual energy running through our bodies, what happens is, and it is a sexual energy. I know it sounds kind of woo-woo, but honest to goodness, I have elderly and very conservative women that come through the program, and they have an entirely different experience. So it starts with love. It starts with self-love and practicing self-love. And that in and of itself is transformative for women. But as women develop their sexual health, what happens is there is an awakening in the body and in the heart, and she becomes a different person. She expresses herself differently out into the world. She sees that other people love her and can see that. She doesn't feel broken. And it changes all of the relationships in her life. It changes how she is with everyone, not just with a very intimate partner, but for everyone. And, the Dalai Lama said that the Western world would be healed by the Western woman, or the world would be healed by the Western woman. And Western women are starting to wake up, and this is a part of it. So when you wake up that energy in her body, she becomes very healing to herself, to her children, to her partner, to her community, to our culture, our society.
Wow, that's pretty incredible to think about there, definitely.
So this is important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where my passion comes from, looking at it in that way. I've realized, just watching what's going on with the population that comes through the course and the shifting that's happened and the shifts that's happened to myself, I realized that this is important stuff.
Well, that, and take a look at it. Everybody's enjoying themselves. They're lighter on their feet. You feel like doing a heck of a lot more. You feel inspired, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the inspiration and creativity that comes is pretty amazing. So I've seen women that are, they're postmenopausal. They've shut down. They're no longer working. Or they shut down their business, and all of a sudden they get into something brand new. Not that they're overworking themselves, because they're not. They're finding balance in a way that they've never had before. And I think that allowing ourselves the capacity to be loved, to feel loved, completely changes, like I said, it changes her and everybody that she touches. So this is what the women want. This is what the men want. And it really is, it's a game changer.
And you're right about that, too. It's something that also men want. We want to feel excited that we're out there doing, solving problems. We want to feel excited about that, it's just like you said earlier. This really is a very unique perspective and conversation versus what you typically see and hear out there.
And I'm going to tell you something else, Daniel. When a woman has this woken up in her, the old word for what I'm talking about is Shakti. It's waking up Shakti. And I don't think in English we have a word for that energy moving through her. But when she is settled within herself and libido is there and this energy is moving through her and she's awakened and satisfied and feeling love, what happens is her capacity to appreciate the male partner, or the maleness of our society, grows. Women develop and communicate in the class a greater appreciation for the capacity of men, for the protection that men give, for the problem solving because men are problem solvers. They're so good at it. We can honor our men better when we're feeling whole. And that changes everything. It's a game changer. We need to realize that the capacity of men is so amazing, and our society is male bashing, and that's why I wanted to say before, we're not going to male bash. We want to honor our men, but it's hard to do so when you don't feel loved.
I agree. I completely agree, especially when you hear a lot about the claims of, inappropriate advances and things like that, especially with the Weinstein situation. It's like, all of a sudden, again, here comes that conditioning. Is all of a sudden you're hearing this with such frequency that all of a sudden all men are evil. And it's like, no, that's not true. That's just this guy who, obviously must have abused his power. That's one person. All men aren't in that level of power.
No. And
most of us are just working class stiffs just trying to make it through the day and have some honor for them,
And I think that the men of our society require more respect. They need to be respected and honored for their honor. Men have honor, and a lot of women don't realize the honor that their men have. They're going to be there no matter what. They're going to show up. And I'm not saying every single guy, but for the most part, guys have honor, and they're to be respected. And this whole move that we've had towards male bashing and every guy is sinister is unfortunate, highly unfortunate.
And again, it's with the frequency of the message. That's the key. And I mean, I'm in media, and I look at this and I go, can't you people be more responsible with opening your mouths than you are? You know, can't you be more responsible with the written word than you are? You know, shut it all down. Just walk away from it, because when you stand outside your house on your porch and you look around at the world they claim is out there, you realize you're not going to see anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, you're just not going to see it. And that's where, you know, it's as my partner and I say, you know, what are you putting out there into the world? There's a sense of responsibility. You can't just simply say, well, this is my job. Well, you put yourself in that job, you know, so it's your responsibility what you do from that point forward regardless, you know. And it's the same way with what we're talking about here today.
Absolutely.
Now, you have this course. I think it's called The Mystery is Over. Is that correct?
Yes, actually.
Okay, let's talk about that, when it's happening, and how people can find out more about, women especially, because that's what it's for, can find out more about that.
Yeah, and so first of all, you know, today we're talking about the 3 secrets to awakening that libido, and those 3 secrets, and we kind of already went over them, is exactly what we go over in the class. Okay, so I'll enumerate them for those of you that want to hear the numbers.
Recap those 3 secrets there.
Okay, so the 3 secrets are basic information, getting a map of the female body, and learning how to use that map. It's hard to get someplace if you don't know where you're going. So that's a piece, and learning some of the basics around like shame. Everyone has sexual shame. Everyone. In fact, if you're not a psychopath, because psychopaths don't have shame, if you're not a psychopath, you're going to have sexual shame to some degree. And so what do we do with that? It's normal. But how do you handle it when you're stepping into the bedroom? So that is a skill. That's a skill to be practiced, and it's really very doable. And we learn how to do those things. So people get to deal with shame. So that's part of the basic education. How do you learn what your body needs? Like, how do you know what the style is of your body? What's your body's sexual needs? What's your psychological style? Once you learn all of that, then that's kind of basic information. How do you communicate your needs? Once you know what you need, how do you communicate those needs to someone else? So basic information, communication skills. So that's step 1, is information, learn. Step 2 for libido may have to do with taking a look at the hormones. We talked about that early on, like have some blood work done or some saliva testing, and honestly, I don't prefer one over the other. They're both good and they both have problems. So either way, taking a look at a nice general panel of hormones, and this is for guys and for women, look and see if there's anything that's crashed. If there is, then there are natural ways to bring those hormones back up. Sometimes it has to do with nutrition. Sometimes there's herbs that can be used. Some people choose to actually replace with a bioidentical natural hormone. The only thing I will caution you about replacing hormones is don't use too much. I see a lot of people way overdosed, and that's a problem. It's not good for your liver either.
Yeah, I've addressed that many times about the attitude in America that if something is good,
do a lot.
Then more is better. It's like, no.
So step number 2 is making sure that your blood chemistry is balanced. And that's what I do. That's what I spend my days doing every day, is looking over people's blood chemistry, balancing the endocrine system, as well as the basic chemistry of the body, fats and minerals and such. So we have everything that we need for great health. And then the third step 3, is practice. Have a practice, and that includes like bringing in that ritual and working with the body, especially for women. We are slow cookers, so you have to stay warm. And if you're practicing and you have a warm body, then it heats up easier. Everything works better. All the parts work better together. It's like a well-oiled machine. Okay?
Wow.
And so practice and having, most people are really good about taking care of their teeth. They keep their hair clean. They have practices of cleanliness, of certain ways of eating. We have things that we do every day. But you don't think of your sexual health as being very important, and it is. It's amazingly important, especially for a woman. So for men, don't have to worry about it. Flip the switch for most guys. For some guys, not so much. They may need to do step 1 or step 2 for their own bodies. So step 3 for a guy is easier. For a woman, it's maintenance. And how she goes about doing that and who's involved with that is going to be a choice. So in the class, we give all the information. Like I said, we've got 21 faculty in the class. Gosh, you get to hear from the most amazing human beings I have ever met. And they have great information, and every one of them to the T is kind, knowledgeable, and has an aspect to look at sexuality that is different from the next. They're all very, very unique. So, of course, you learn from shame experts, communication experts. We learn different ways of touch, of quality of touch. So we learn how to touch our own bodies in a way that works for us. That's sometimes key for those that have never had orgasm. And developing a ritual that's right for us. One person's ritual is not going to be the right one for the next. And I'm not talking about something religious here. I'm talking about the things that you do before you get sexually involved. And then we also learn how to practice self-love. And that's a big deal for women because we are hardwired to take care of others, as I mentioned before, and not ourselves. And we're going to learn, honest to God, ladies, you may for the very first time find energy in your body that you never noticed before. There's like chakras, balls of energy, and yes, they do exist. I was shocked myself. So they are there. They are real. And once you notice them and you experience it for yourself, you're going to say, hey, wow, that's really interesting. And I'd love to give them different names. One of the things that we're doing in the class actually is developing new language around female sexuality because our parts have been referred to in medical manner, right, medical words, and like using Latin, or they're referred to in derogatory terms. And what we're developing is new language that's actually kind and sweet to speak about our bodies because there hasn't been much of a way of speaking about a female body. So in the class, we get to have buddies. We have a private online Facebook page so you can talk to women, but you can have a private buddy that if you want. And what we want to do is to start to ask the questions that you've been afraid to ask and answer those questions and have a safe place where we can do that exploration, have that education that you may never have had before. And that's what the class is like. You come, it's done on the internet, so you're going to come to class by internet. It's completely anonymous. So nobody needs to know who you are. You can even give yourself a nom de plume on the Facebook page so nobody knows who you are. But you can kind of show up as a woman and learn about your body in a way that you haven't been able to do. So, and the class really has developed. It's quite amazing because it's truly developed into, with all of the education and the amazing speakers, the faculty that we have, the depth of knowledge is so amazing. It's, I think, the first class for female sexual health that is done in a professional manner that's hitting every aspect of female sexuality. So, and there's no bad questions. no issues. Every person and every aspect of looking at sexuality is acceptable. All questions, there's no stupid questions.
Right. I was thinking as you were talking about all of this, Dr. Bavacqua, I couldn't help myself, but Marianne Williamson came to mind with something she's attributed to saying, and that is, our deepest fear isn't that we are inadequate, but that we are more powerful beyond measure. And when you take a look at what you've been sharing with here today, you're suggesting, and I completely support this, that it's time for all of us to step out of the shadows of conditioning, to claim ourselves for this one shot that we have in life to experience life in its fullness. It does take patience and it does take courage, but the end result will be beyond belief.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Daniel, well said.
Well, you inspire me that way. See, I've just had an orgasm nobody ever even thought of before. It's a mental one.
Do actually, we have a teacher, a doctor, that comes into the class and teaches the women how to have an orgasm without touching.
You got to love that one.
It's a
I'm
mental
going to go
orgasm.
to the bathroom for a minute. I need to feel better about this situation here. Okay, I'm ready.
So that having orgasm without touching the body, and that is possible, and the women learn. If they want to practice that, by the time they go through the class, there's going to be so many cool things that they'll be exposed to that any one of the aspects can be a practice that can go on well beyond the class. And that is one of those that is very interesting because you can stimulate mentally any part of the body. So it's playtime, basically.
Gotcha. Now, before you give out how people can find out more about you and your work, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners?
Oh, Daniel. I would say that, ladies and gentlemen, you are intuitive beings. Listen to your intuition. And when you see something or have that internal hit on anything, if it's don't take the freeway today, or yes, I want to learn more about that, or I really need to get out of town, whatever it is, listen to your internal voice because that's the real stuff. And those of you that practice meditation or prayer, you get these hits all the time. I call them hits. That intuitive hit of what is correct, what is right. It doesn't come from your head. Location-wise, it's probably going to feel like it comes from your belly or your body somewhere. Those intuitive messages are a big deal. Don't ignore them. That's what I would say.
And one piece of intuition you can go with as you're listening here today is to find out more about where you can discover this wonderful work if you choose to participate in it. And how can they find out more about that?
Well, my website is drsandybavacqua.com. So it's DrSandyBev as in Victor, ACQUA.com. And you can go into, take a look at women's health, and you can do that. You can also call the office if you want. If anyone on this call or listening to this program wants to, if you have questions, you're not sure if this is right for you, I have put aside a few free 15-minute consults, all right? And so if you call and schedule a free 15-minute consult, you and I will talk together, and I'll answer your questions personally, and let's make sure that this is the right thing for you. So the number is 520-743-0575, or you can email the office at team, T-E-A-M, at drsandybavacqua.com.
And should you decide to have the courage to step out into the light, the possible worst thing that can happen is you might discover 7 orgasms, and that's a minimum according to some of these experts here. Oh boy.
Well, yeah. I mean, that is a minimum. That is a minimum.
There you go.
That's
7
just
orgasm minimum. That beats any comedy club I've ever seen. So, Dr. Babakwa, thank you for being on the program today. And again, it's always enlightening to have you here. Definitely.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
You bet. One more time, go ahead and give out that website again.
The website is www.drsandybavakwa.com.
Absolutely, and we'll have that on our website at beyond50radio.com as well. Thank you again.
You're very welcome. You take care.
You too. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do have a wonderful weekly e-newsletter. We encourage you to sign up for it to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.